This is Sarah Milligan with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program at Oklahoma State University. And I'm here talking to Keith Franklin. We're at the Chilocco alumni reunion in 2017, and we're talking about Chilocco as a school, and as well as Mr. Franklin's military experience as well. So now that we know what that's all for, I like to start. Just tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, where are you from? Where'd you grow up? Maybe a little bit about your parents and any of your family that you want to talk about, and then we'll just sort of move forward.
Okay, I was born in Shawnee, Oklahoma.
Oh, just down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little house. Born in a house, not in a hospital.
Uh-huh.
In 1940, January 1st, and was raised more or less in Shawnee and Stroud, Cushing area.
Mm-hmm.
And then come to Chilocco in 1953. And your little background is my dad went to school at Chilocco, here at Chilocco in 1929 to 1933. And his brother went to school 1922 to 29, I think it was. So the family's pretty well entrenched here. They were all three brothers, and they were all called Happy.
Really?
Yeah.
They were all called Happy.
Happy Franklin. So if they asked you, are you Happy's boy? I said, well, which Happy? Yeah.
Or the answer is always yes.
Yeah. And they always told me, I talked to Dad quite a bit because he was an artist too. Very good artist. And his roommate was Woody Crumble, which is a famous Indian artist.
Mm-hmm.
And he would always tell me stories, and when I come to the reunions back in the early or late middle 70s, I guess, when I got back Southeast Asia, and I met him at one of them. And I always liked to go sit with the old guys, see if they knew my dad or my uncle. And he'd sit there. He knew Dad very well, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about. He was telling me a story about Dad also said, but he was talking about how they had to make money and also try to keep their room clean because back then I think it was just switching from uniforms to civilian clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And but what they did is, of course, being artists, they always try to make drawings and sell them back during the Depression because there was no money. And so what they done, they put draw Indian designs and pictures and stuff on slickers. The raincoats.
Like raincoats, yeah.
So they put whatever the guy wanted, they draw on there and use put it in oil. And then he told me they would draw a picture, one picture each of them, once a week. And I was kind of, what? And he said, yeah. He said, what we do is we think of a picture and talk stories and stuff, and then they would draw whatever, they were emulating in their mind, so they put it down, draw it, then hang it on the wall. And then when the major come in to inspect the room, he said after the first time he'd seen all the artwork, well, he'd go right over what picture they drew, and he'd be looking at it, wow. He said, mighty fine room, keep up the good work. So they never really got inspected.
Wow.
And he was always looking for the new pictures.
So they did that on purpose?
Yeah, they schemed that up, I thought, well, you guys, man, maybe that's where I get all that scheming from. So they, and he told me, he says, Dad was telling me, he said, Woody always had trouble with drawing hoofs, on his horses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway. So he said he'd sit down and they would practice. Dad would show him how to do it. And they traded, you know, secrets and stuff on how to draw and how to, you know, do whatever they do with the market.
Yeah.
So it was fun to listen to both of them. And it was so, some of it was really so funny, it would just crack you up all the time to hear all the things they did, you know, all the conniving they did. So it was good.
Well, that's the things. The 20s and the 30s, from what I've been able to read, I mean, there's not really anybody for me to ask anymore. What I've been able to read, it seemed like a really interesting time on campus.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It seems like they were really self-sufficient, you know, that, like you said, they're either finding ways to make money on their own.
Yeah.
Or they, you know, had to do a lot of agricultural work or work in the steam rooms. I mean, I know that happened, but there was, but you know, it also makes me curious too, because some of the other things I've read is the reason why some people chose, especially like whole sets of family came especially during the Depression, because of that self-sufficiency was, you know, attractive. Do you know why your dad and your brothers and everybody decided to come to Chilocco? Was your parents, or was it a choice?
Well, it was really a family problem, because my parents divorced, and they got divorced, I believe, in 1952, 51, and so there was, you know, a little animosity amongst the kids. There was 4 of them. And I had 2 sisters and an older brother. So the judge decided that the 2 older boys would go with my dad, and the 2 girls would go with my mom. And they moved to California, my mom and the 2 sisters, because of the shipyards and the Korean War and everything. Good for them. And we stayed here, and we lived in the North Shawnee, which is over in a pretty wealthy area, but we didn't, you know, we weren't wealthy, so we lived in the old Navy barracks at the airport. It used to be a naval training station, air station, so we lived in the old family quarters, barracks type. And so it was pretty hard times. And Dad didn't make some payments, so my mom had him put in jail for child support negligence. And she didn't realize when she put him in jail, we didn't have any means to eat. We didn't have any food. So pretty tough.
Yeah.
And I was telling my buddy the other day, I said, man, I learned how to cook flour so many different ways. I was hungry, so I just go out there and get flour, and I said, well, of course I fried it, and then I got tired of eating fried flour with nothing in it. You know, I didn't know how to cook, so I'd mix it up, throw it in there, and it cooked, so I'd eat it. So we, you know, and it was pretty rough time. You know, I didn't have a whole bunch of clothes, and of course I'm going to Wilson School, and it's all pretty posh, pretty wealthy. But one thing I did have, that I could play basketball. So I got on the team there at Wilson. And then also, my dad was a musician. He played in an orchestra here at Chilocco. And then he was a drummer. And he had a little band, they got together. Played around Shawnee and Falls Valley and all down there. And he was a drummer and clarinet player. So he got a saxophone, and when I was in I think 5th or 4th grade, I started playing saxophone. I had a little alto. And I got I thought I could play it pretty good. And I was in the band at Wilson, so they overlooked my ragged, same old clothes that I wore. I had to switch. I had two sets, so I switch them off, And then I picked blackberries and stuff and give them that money where I could have a little food. And then the guys that run around with Billy Forster, his folks, my buddy's dad worked for an oil company. He run the lines around, and the mother was a school teacher. So I spent a lot of time at their place, because he had all kinds of model airplanes out, and I had to go over. Plus he played the trumpet, so we'd mess around with him. And she found out that I wasn't, eating like I should. And I was skinny as a rail. I mean, turned sideways and disappeared. So she got me a job as a delivery boy. But it really was, I had a little money, but I could eat that because I had to clean up the grill and back then all the pharmacies, or what do you call them, drugstores, all had a little
counter,
yeah,
whatever it was.
And it had, about 10 stools and 4 booths. So then I'd fry up hamburgers,
Mm-hmm.
And then I made more friends because they'd come in. I wouldn't charge them. I'd go in and make I call it a rainbow malt, and I just put all the flavors, mix it up, they're looking, and I'd slide it over to them. So I become popular in that area.
That's true.
Yeah.
So what about your brother? What was he doing at this time?
He kind of got, he had Indian friends, and they were Kickapoo, and they adopted him. I mean, the Indian adopted him.
Right.
So he had a place to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really not wanting to do that. I wanted to get out and see what the world was about. So, but when my mom, or grandmother, found out what was going on, so she got mad at both my dad and mom. So
is that your mom's mom or your dad's mom?
that was my mom's mom.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's mom was in Stroud.
Oh.
So what happened is grandma got and pushed the issue that I needed to get someplace where I could be taken care of, And so it all come down. Dad said, well, I think I know where I'm going to put them and be at Chilocco, because they've got, places to stay and good food.
How did you feel about that?
I didn't like it at all. I was pretty well on my own. When I got the job and I could eat, but if I had to pay rent, I'd been out there, been living in a cave, I guess. But anyway, I really didn't want to give up my freedom,
Mm-hmm.
because I always was trying to see what was over the next hill.
Mm-hmm.
See, kind of like an explorer, I'd say, what's over here?
So you were 13 or 14 when you moved to Chicago?
I was 13. 12 when I first started, And then 13 came, and I was in junior high, and I had to walk to school, and that was good 2 miles, maybe more than that. And I had to walk in the morning to the school, and then in the evenings, when school was out, to walk. So that was a pretty good jaunt. But anyway, I in the winter's the only time I really didn't like it. And so Dad set us down, and he said, I'm going to put you guys in Chilocco, because Grandma was really raising Cain about it. And I went to school there, and he was telling us all the things they taught and what we'd be able to do. Kind of painted a real nice rosy picture. And then that day came, and we went out. And of course, they had a dog. We had a dog since I was knee-high to grasshopper, and I didn't want to lose him. That was my best buddy.
Yeah.
So here I went, got out, and it was really traumatic for me. And they knew him. A lot of the teachers that were still here were there when he was there. So he took me right up to the chief cook and bottle washer, Mr. Coglaser, the head boys advisor. And they were all buddy-buddy and everything. And he told me, he says, turn around. And I looked at him and he said, turn around. And so I turned around and he kicked me in the rear end, And then he said, that's what I had to do to your dad, and I'm going to do it to you. You get out of line. I went, oh my God, where am I? So, and it was just, in jest and everything. Dad told me, he said, you got to watch this guy now. he's going to be watching me because he knows me and we're personal friends. And I said, all right, no problem.
Do you think that was someone your dad had kept in contact with?
No.
Just someone he knew from when he was
then I didn't know. I had to surmise that that's what, they were close friends. So I stayed away from him most of I could. So I mean, back then, he wouldn't know, which he would know, but it was just kind of dumb on my part to think that. So they took me over to Home One, and it was early. Dad took me up there second week in August. School didn't start till September. So they took me over to Home One and checked me in. They took me down to my room, and I thought it was kind of like, an insane asylum or something. It was real dark. They didn't have any lights on in the hallway. And it was just kind of spooky,
Mm-hmm.
And then they took me to my room. And I had, just like you'd almost seen a book, had a little suitcase. And it was straw type looking. And it was yellow and had the brown stripes on it. I think everybody had the same one. Same kind, I guess it was from Sears and Roebuck's or somebody selling them. Dresses. But anyway, everybody had that same thing. But I got in there in the room and I was just looking around. I said, oh my God. And they had those old Spanish type oval windows.
Mm-hmm.
How they built it, and they were huge. So I was standing there looking out the window, turning around looking around. They had a what would you call it? A dresser.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a dresser type. It wasn't a mirror, but it was where you put your clothes. And then the door was right next to it where the closet was. Then the light was like a pool hall light. Just had a long line to come from the ceiling down with that little cover with a string coming down where you turn it on, or turn it off right there.
So you have to walk into the room.
And then you turn the string on. Then when you go on this way, there was another little chest where you put stuff. And then the bed, there was a double bed there. And it had green and white striped bed cover on it. Or not bed cover, but whatever you would call it.
Like a comforter or whatever.
Well, it was kind of like, it was just like a blanket type looking thing, but it was just a cover.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of looked at that and sat on the edge of the bed and started thinking, how am I going to get out of here? How do I get back to Grandma?
Was your brother with you?
No.
It's
They
just
put him in another,
Oh.
he was in another dorm. So, and nobody told me anything. I mean, I was taken, that was my room, they left. And so I'm sitting there thinking, all gloom and everything, I really don't like this dark, gloomy looking place. And then a squirrel come down. There was a squirrel that lived in the tree there. I was looking at him, I said, man, maybe I'll move in with him. But anyway, I was sitting there and a whistle went off. And as soon as the guy blew the whistle, I was sitting on the double bed, a bunk bed. It had a bar that went across, so I hit the bar, it scared me, bam, oh. And it said, bed check. I said, oh hell, I was sitting on that bed and it's all messed up. So I got up, fixed my bed, got it all straightened out, and just standing there waiting for it to check my bed.
Did you know that's what you were expected to do?
No, I didn't know what it was. I didn't have any idea, And he said bed check, so I literally took it was a bed check. So I'm standing there waiting for him to check the bed, and he opened the door. Is everybody here? And I said, yeah, I guess I'm here. And he went on out, and I said, damn, he didn't even check my bed. And I'm serious. I sat there going, of course I took everything literally then, and I still do really.
Did he know who you were? I mean,
No,
any indication?
They didn't. They just go room to room, make sure that if you're there, and they didn't have any names because it's early, So whoever's living there usually works, you know, doing odd jobs to pay for the room and board for the summer. So I guess that's what he thought I was, another worker. So I went to bed. Of course, I didn't sleep very much. And I'm still trying to think of how am I going to get home. I don't even know which way to go. And so another whistle blew at 6 o'clock, rolling everybody out. So I got up and I said, I wonder where the bathrooms are. But they didn't even tell me that, you know. So I opened the door up a little bit and watched. The guys are coming by with their towels. I said, yeah, I'll follow those guys. So I looked at the guy went by and how he had his towel and his toothbrush. So I, you know, put mine on, went cruising, and I watched them and they went down in the basement. So I went with them. Because I didn't know he was even in the basement. So I got down the steps and they had this big water trough. They had about 2 of them, look, 2 big ones. And everybody's all there and they had soap up on the top of it. And a little tray that went all the way around. It was Lysol. They had big brown Lysol and then they had little white ones, you know, which was the hand soap. I knew that from what Grandma wore. She washed it with the big ones, you know. So I'm sitting there and watching that over there, and I got all leathered up, you know, scrubbing down. And the guys I was with, about 4 of us, and the other 3 left. And as soon as they left, the water went on. And I said, well, here, and I had that light. I don't know if you ever had Lysol, but if you get in your eyes, it really burns, you know. And here I'm all prettied up with soap. And I was looking around, and I couldn't find the handle. So I said, well, where is it? You know, what the hell's the handle? You know, and I kept looking around. And finally I stepped back and here come 2 more guys and they walked up and they come on. And I said, yeah. So I went over and got real, you know, quick. I got cleaned off. And then I backed off and I was drying myself and I watched. And they left and it went off. I said, damn, how did they do that? I walked up to it. You know, and it didn't do anything. So I said, I don't know, where are they getting this thing to work? And so I stepped back and just watched. And these guys walked up and there was a little bar on the floor and they stepped on it and they come. And I've never seen anything like that in my life. You know? Oh God, what an education. But anyway, so I go back upstairs. And this is my first day, my first true day at Chilocco. And and I said, boy, I'm hungry. I wonder where the chow is. Where do I get food? And so I went out, I got dressed, went out on the porch, you know, and I was watching. And everybody was going one way. So I said, gotta be over there. It's gotta be where they're going. So I got down and cruised, got with some guys, you know. We went in the chow hall, loop hall. And then I looked, when I got in, I looked and I said, boy, there was 20, 30 guys lined up on the wall, you know, coming in the door. And there was only 2 girls over here in this line. So I said, no, I'm going to go over there. So there's only 2. So I got over there and everybody in that line was whistling and cat calling. And I said, I wonder what's going on. Why they hollering at me, you know? So I got my food and they kept hollering, you know. You got, and pretty soon here come the major. And she said, you know you're in the girls' line. And I said, no, ma'am, there was no sign. It said girls, you know. And she said, you got a point. And there wasn't, and if you're brand new, you don't know, you know.
Was she mad at you coming up to you at first?
Well, she was, yeah. She was disturbed that I was over there, you know. And when I told her, I said, well, I didn't see no girl sign, you know, because I looked, you know. And so she made that remark. So everybody had to be indoctrinated. When you go in, you have to go in the boys, you're a boy and a girl. So I went, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do next, you know. All these things are happening. So you're very leery about what you're going to do and where you're going to go. Nobody's telling you nothing.
So none of the students and none of the staff?
Huh?
None of the students and none of the staff?
No, it was
just let you go.
Well, there wasn't very many, you know. There was mostly guys, and they were all working, you know, out on the farm and doing whatever And the girls were very few. Like I say, there was, I think, about 2 in that one. So that was, and then some of them started coming in. You know, some of the more students coming in, more my age. So I started making friends with them.
So did you stay in home 1?
No, I stayed there for a little bit, and then they moved me to where I was supposed to be as a freshman. Had a freshman boy. Where I was at was a sophomore boy. And then the big home 6 was junior and senior.
Mm-hmm.
So I was at home 2. They moved me in there. And it was still pretty much of a new thing. And they would move me in with 4 roommates, or me and 3 other guys. And of course, a lot of those guys, found out later on, were raised there. They put them in schools when they were 6 years old.
At other Indian schools, or
Yeah.
by that point.
Outer boards.
Yeah.
So here I'm with, one of them was really, you know, he was a con at what's going on, because he was raised. He knew how to survive.
Yeah.
And I come in to lay down for a little bit. And I laid down, and there was a wet, dirty mop under my bedspread, that's what we call it. And the same old green and white stripe. And it's the same bedspread they have in prisons. Because I noticed that later on when I watched the show after I graduated. That's where those are from. They're a prison or some ward, you know, some mental institution. Yeah, I said, oh my God. So but the mop was a stinky, dirty, wet mop. So I had to go down and get all new bedding plus a new mattress, pillow, everything, because it just soaked through.
Why did he do that?
Well, you get to that.
Sorry.
And so I was pretty perturbed about it, you know, really kind of, I was mad as they got the room outside. And I wanted to know who done it. And I asked my roommates now. They were pretty cool. I mean, one guy named was Robert Buzzard. And then the next guy was Homer Snail. So I had a buzzard and a snail in one corner. And then the guy on the other bed like mine was single, you know. And his name was Sauce July. And I never heard of anybody named Sauce July. Really unique. And then here old Keith Franklin, a little Indian name, you know, but I'm just joking. You had So I looked over at them 2 guys, and that guy was gone. Sauce was gone. So I asked him, I said, who done that? And Robert said he did. Sauce did. So after I got all that set up and everything, got my new area cleaned up and bed made, then I went downstairs and they had a little canteen place they open up every now and then. You get cookies and shoes, lots of ends, you know, candy bars and stuff. So I bought a little package of Oreo cookies. And so I went back up and boy, his bed was made military style. You know, it had turned in. The sheets were nice and tight. Had a nice roll on it. So that's when you pull it back, like a military bed. So I pulled all that back, crumbled those Oreo cookies up, and then I poured water in there and pulled it back and made it like it was. And waited for him to come back in. And he come in, finally he got his clothes off to go to bed. He slid into the That was so funny. Homer and Robert got a big kick out of it, and then we had a big fight right after that. Because he asked him the same thing, and he said, pointed at me. So we had a knockdown drag out.
Like a fist fight?
Yeah. And I wasn't very big then. I weighed probably 120 pounds soaking wet. But I was scrappy. I wouldn't let anybody push me around, especially putting them on in my head. I don't care how big you were. But anyway, we had a real knockdown drag out, and then then it was no talk, everybody's real quiet. Because my cousins come in when we were fighting. Grabbed him by the hair and said, "Do you want me to take care of him?" And they're pretty good sized boys. And Sac and Fox was the other one's cousins. And I said, "No, I think we're going to settle this ourselves." And so he knew from his experience that I had relatives there. So you know that you're not going to go over there and do that. So I went to chow the next day, and he was in line in front of me. And somebody made a remark about his brother, you know, and his brother's name was Moses July. And I kind of looked at him, you know, where he could hear me, and I said, "Ain't nobody named Moses July." And then he got mad, and we fought again in the line. And then we got through that, and then the matrons come, so they slept that out. So the next day, I found out his older sister name was Omega. So we had another fight. Who the hell would name their kid Omega? You know? So they were looking with it. And then after that was it. And we become friends. We called it truth.
Really?
Yeah. So we didn't pick on each other at all.
So did you ever have a sense of why he started that with you?
Oh, he did the honorary.
Just to do it?
That's the way
because you were new?
Oh, yeah. God, the whole freshman year, he damn near killed me. All his honor did. But then they're like, they make you as a freshman pull ag. You have to take agriculture as a freshman. You got to take it 3 times a week. And then you go 2 times to your regular, whatever you're going to learn to do. And we'd be out like, they had a top stud. They had some of the best Morgan horses in the state, in the United States even. Boy, they had some fine Morgans. No Army mules, they had the best. They had a lot of nice horses in there. A lot of, what do you call them? They were cutters. They cut the herd. What do they call those guys? I can't remember that. But they would cut a cow back in when they got out. You just had to hang on because they'd flip you off of it because they'll jump, you know, and sway and try to get them back in. The Colonel's boy, he was a stud and he knew it. And he was mean.
Is that the horse's name?
Yeah, Colonel's boy. You had to get in there and they train you. You know how to clean the hoofs out, file them down, take off the shoe and file them out, and then clean them out. All that to take care of him. And he liked to be pampered, so I'm out there and it was my turn to clean the back hoofs. So what you do is you get the hoof and stick it up between your legs. You're like this with the hoof, and you're there taking care of it. But he didn't care about that. And so what they done, they got a mirror with sauce, and he backed the mirror up to the pen where I was at. And he got excited, and I'm sitting there trying to, and he got wild. I went damn near died for him. He was snorting and biting and kicking, and I got out of there. And I said, "I'll get you back one of these days, buddy," And then that's just one, but everybody was around. He told everybody he was going to do it, so they were all watching, see how I handled it, Mm-hmm. Of course, I flung it and made it and got over, But we done stuff that between each other, and it was strictly competition then, because I got to know him real well. Mm-hmm. And we'd ride horses and cattle. And they'd have a cattle show, or it was I can't think of what you would call it, but where you get all the animals and people come and look at them. And they come from all over the United States to buy them here. Because I met a guy 30 years later, working with him in the Air Force. He owned a sheep ranch down in Texas, down in New Brunswick, and he'd drive all the way to Chilocco when they had their auction. And he'd buy our stock. Yeah. Stock his stock. And I was sitting there and I said, "You gotta be kidding me." He said, "No, I've been doing it for about 15 years.
Really?
Yeah, because it's a good fine line of sheep. I'm really blown away. I didn't know that.
Well, I've heard, yeah.
But they would have that stock show every year. And so I asked, and every year as a freshman, you got to show something in the stock show.
Right.
And so I asked all the seniors, I said, "What's the easiest thing you can show?" You know? They said, "A pig." I said, "A pig?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "If you train them, they'll do anything." So I said, "Okay, I'll try it." So like an idiot, I got a bigger pig. I should have got a little bitty one, you know. But I had this big old sow. And I didn't have anything but problems with it. Because they said tie a rope on his hind leg and get you a switch, you know, and teach you to go. And every hole in the fence, he'd try to go through it, I'd have to pull him out, you know. And this is every day take him down. Damn, I'm just, you know. And if I got a little one, it'd been a lot easier. And then we made a pact between the four of us that were showing pigs. We'd take turns feeding them. Well, one guy didn't feed them all week, so when I went in there, they tried to eat meat, you know, they were hungry. So then we cut that out, and I moved mine down by himself.
Oh, I see.
And I felt good stuff, corn, maize.
Did what you need to.
And then I was getting pretty proud of him because I got him where he'd stand and then take my command and then feed him corn, you know, scratch his back. And I was day of the stock show all down. But there's a little bit more went into that. But anyway, he took off on me. Somebody spooked him really, and he took off running, and I had to chase him to catch him. He wouldn't stop. And I had washed him that night and oiled him, and man, he looked like $1 million. And he fell over in a mud hole just laid there because he was spooked out. He got oh. So I had to take him back up to the barn and wash him down, do all that again, you know, feed corn, trying to cool him down.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got into the competition, and there was 4 pigs, and we're all standing there. Of course, I had the big one, and I had that little twig, and I'd scratch his back. So he sat there. He liked that, you know. He wouldn't move, so I scratched his back. And then he told the guy, he said, "Turn him this way, turn him to the left." So I reached up there and I trained him to touch him on the ear, and he would turn. So. And I had nicked his ear, you know, when I was chasing him. And I hit that nick, and he took off, and all 4 pigs took off. And everybody, of course, they're full. People are there watching. When they all run into the stands, and we're having to pull them back out, and it was a riot. But then again, one of the things, this is awesome. We're up there feeding the pigs and whatever he was doing. And all these guys had Herefords, calves. Boy, they had washed them. I mean, really clean. Man, they looked nice. They looked like dogs, you know. They were really curried up. And we all were sitting there smoking a cigarette. And somebody said, "Let's have a rodeo." So we took that first one out and put a rope around his belly and then rode him for a while. And to get him going, we'd wring his tail. They're naked, we'd put him back, got the next one. And they had already trained them to be gentle, you know, and they were used to them. And we just turned them wild again. And they come out. We were standing getting our pigs and put them in the truck. And the cattle was, you know, all stressed out, didn't want to go, you know. I can't understand what's wrong with it.
You all were rascals.
So that's really what it was. And Sauce was the instigator of a lot of that stuff. So it was just constant,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But that's what made it interesting too.
I had a question about, you said that you had cousins there. Did you know you had cousins there before you
No, they come in later.
They did?
Yeah. So like I said, I got there early.
Yeah.
So I was there about 2 weeks.
Was that their first year there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you all went into sort of the same time?
We were kind of, I didn't even know they were there until he come into the room.
Really?
Yeah, I hadn't seen him yet. Because we were all moving into that dorm, you know, and there was, oh God, about 800 kids or more. So there was a bunch of people you're just constantly moving around, moving your bedding and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even know he was there until he came over and grabbed me. And I thought, oh, good. And then there's some guys that were cousins that were Kickapoos.
Your cousins?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad's side. So we started getting where you know. He had some friends.
Mm-hmm.
But I made friends with those guys eventually. Yeah. Not close, but Buzzard will probably be here. And he was, and I always thought that was unusual for Robert Buzzard.
Yeah, I think he was here last year too.
Yeah. Yeah, he went all 4 years. So did
yeah.
And Sauce. And we had, as seniors, we had a big fight again.
You and Sauce?
Yeah. And what happened is we were going out of our room in Home 6, we were seniors. And he left the door open. And I hollered at him, "You born in the barn? Close the door." You know, he turned around and he was mad about something. I guess him and his girlfriend been fighting. It's kind of honoring. And I knew he was going to swing at me. Because he could tell, so I hit him as hard as I could right in the nose. And then I was going to try to get out of there. You know? And he caught me, and I had those blue suede shoes, you know, with the wide rims back in that day. And they put horseshoe taps all around the heel. And we had granite floors, so I was trying to turn, and boy, my feet went out, and I hit that water fountain at the end, knocked me out. And then when I come to, all I could see was sparks, and he was on top of me. And he was hitting me, and then my other friend, you know, hauled off and hit him to get him off. And then when we got through with all that, we got up and looked at each other and shook hands and said, "Let's go eat." And so 4 days later, we had to take class pictures. So you look at our class. Well, you can't tell him because he's real dark. But you can look at me, and I had a big bump where I hit that water fountain. Then I had one black eye here. And it didn't puff up, but it was still dry.
Oh, I'm going to look now. That was 1957.
Yeah, because you'll see that I had a flat top, and you can see that bump on this side. You know, I sat there, wow, they just knocked me cuckoo. But anyway, that was odd that we fought freshmen, and then we fought.
Yeah. Were you all roommates the whole time?
No. No, he went on to get other roommates. Sauce.
What did he end up doing? Do you know? Yeah.
I think he was finally got into telecommunications. He worked with telecommunications.
Just curious. After all this,
yeah,
I'm just curious what happened to him. Yeah.
Well, that's what thing that I did also is my dad wanted me to become a mechanic, and I really didn't have the. You know, I really didn't want to be, but I thought it might be different, interesting, so I got into it.
While you were here in Chilocco?
Yeah, when first you have to pick a vocational, and so they put me in the service station. And you have to work your way up, you know, to the mechanic side of it. So there was out there, and they were putting in a lift, hydraulic lift. You know, change the oil and all that stuff. So that's what we were doing, is digging a hole for that lift. And I said, man, I ain't learning no mechanics here. And then it got cold, and we were having to drive trucks and stuff, you know, to get them positioned so they could pick the grain up to them. And that's all I was doing, was digging a hole and driving trucks. And I really didn't care about that. And so I thought real long and hard, what can I get into that's going to be nice and it's warm inside, and I don't have to really work real hard doing this stuff. And so I decided to go to the bakery. So I went over and talked to the superintendent. He says, "Why, sure, we'll switch you over to the bakery." So there I was, man. I got what I wanted. Finally, and I was in a nice warm place, all the food I could eat. Pies, cookies, donuts, whatever. I was in hog heaven for a while, you know, so
nice.
That's how I got into my vocation.
Into baking?
Baking, yeah, I got a certificate in baking.
Well, so how does this fit? Because, I mean, that's your vocation, but you also had a career in the military.
Yeah.
Did that start, did you have military connections while you were at Chilocco? Did that start then or after you got out?
No, I started, that was another story, because what happens is the only money you get is what your parents would send you. Or you had to go work on the weekend. You could pull weeds or do odd jobs for the employee and make enough money where you could, like, if you had a smoking habit, you buy cigarettes. But back then it's like 10 cents a pack. So a buck went a long way.
Yeah.
But I decided that, and my other roommate was Kenneth Ellis, and we were really close. Starting summer. And so Kenneth and I decided, let's go join the Guard. Because they get a check every 90 days. Not that I was a patriot and raised the flag, but I said, yeah, I kind of like that. I like, being in the Army and stuff. I think that'd be nice. Because all my relatives, all my uncles, every one of them, were all Navy. And the ones that weren't Navy were Marines.
Mm-hmm.
And one uncle, my dad's brother, was killed in Guadalcanal in 1943. And he just turned, I think, 18 or 19 when he got killed. And then my mom's sister's husband, Marina, was in a detachment of the Marines that was guarding the embassy in Titsin and Peking. In the late 30s, 1938, 39,
Mm-hmm.
40. And then on December the 8th there, and it was December the 7th here when they bombed Pearl Harbor, they captured it. Because they were already in charge. The Japanese had already taken that area. And they let the Marines and all the different embassies, their armies were all let them stay to guard their own, so they didn't have to put their troops guard. And so when the war started, the Allies, the United States, were taken prisoner. And so they took, his name was Moreno, and he said what they did is, as soon as they were trying to get out of there, but it was just snafu. They just couldn't get the paperwork. People were, not doing their jobs. And so they just messed up, and 280 Marines got captured. And this was in December the 7th, December the 8th, 1949.
Mm-hmm.
So they shipped them to Japan, one of the islands off Hiroshima. And so he was a prisoner of war for 4 years, the whole war. And he weighed 78 pounds when they got him out. Just a mess. And so I was doing research on him. And I usually when I wear stuff, I commemorate those guys. But they had no patch because they weren't like, a fighting division. And so they never had a patch. So what we're doing now is trying to get a patch that we'll send to the Marine headquarters and give them a patch. Mm-hmm. And then at least they'll have.
So that was your uncle?
Yeah, it's the one uncle, and the other one was in the 6th Marines at Guadalcanal. Of course, the 1st Marines is the one that was there first. And so to relieve them, the 6th Marines come in, 2nd Division. They were 1st Division. And so the 6th Marines come in to relieve them. Mm-hmm. In 43, and 42 and 43, and he got killed 4 days before they capitulated and left the island. So he was one of their last bonsais. He got killed. So I've got a whole book on him. I'm studying him because if he's still over there, I want to go get him and bring him home. Yeah. Because the Indians have a right ritual and take his name back, and then they have other things they do. So I wanted to really get him back.
Yeah.
If we could. And I'll go get him.
If you could go get him and bring him back,
Yeah.
what is that? Just sort of a reburial and a ceremonial.
Yeah. Because there's certain beliefs they have, but things I wouldn't want to talk about. But
Sure.
anyway, they have rights that they do,
Mm-hmm.
and he needs to have them so he can be able.
Was he Kickapoo or Sac and Fox?
He's Sac and Fox. So, and I can't find a picture of him. I went to everybody. The only picture I got is where he was on the team, basketball team in Cushing High School. So I've been all the relatives that did, that knew him. So I don't know. I'm still working on. I got a research book on about like that.
And these two uncles were both Chilocco grads, right? If they were your dad's.
No,
it was your dad's dad's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they went to
Your great uncles.
Yeah, my mom's sister's uncle is our mom's sister's husband, which would be my uncle versus Herbie and my aunt.
Right.
No, he was from California.
Oh, okay. So his mom's side of the
Yeah.
family. I got it.
And then let's see, Tom. Of course, Tom's a half brother because my dad's dad died during the flu epidemic in the 19th.
Mm-hmm.
And she remarried. So Tom I think he was 18 or 19, really young.
So you joined the Guard then, and you had some military history in your family, and you were just looking for some extra money and
really, it
something
was.
to do?
I like the idea of looking into it. I wouldn't turn it down because I always thought it was pretty sharp to be a man with Navy guys and be an Army guy at the end, or Air Force, because I'm always, always razz them, that, hey, we're steak and eggs bunch,
Yes.
I was telling you guys are crazy, SOS, and we're steak and eggs. And
So how old were you when you joined the Guard then?
I was 16 years old. I got a waiver. I did.
To go in early.
Yeah. So I joined in 56. In fact, I just turned 16 in January. So I joined in 6th of February 1956. And I stayed in there until I went in the Air Force.
You graduated from Chilocco first,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Then I went to Haskell Institute.
Mm-hmm.
Stayed there a minimum amount of time because it wasn't a college like they told us. And they had their rules were still like we were in high school.
Really?
So it was really, and then they had it set up where you took about 6 courses that were required, mandatory. And if you flunked one of them, you had to take the whole year, everything over again. And I said, oh, if I passed everything else, I have to take it. They said, yeah, you have to go through the whole thing again. That's the way you were looking, the way I was. And I said, well, I may not make bookkeeping next year, so I'd be there forever, And I just thought about it. I really want to go in the military and go see the world, really, because there was no wars.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it'd be a good chance to get overseas, and I'd never been, that far out of Oklahoma, so I thought it was a good chance to get away. So I joined the Air Force in Kansas City.
So that was 1957.
57.
So you graduated from Chilocco and went straight to Haskell and were like,
Right.
meh.
Right.
Okay.
So it was sad, but the reason I was flunking is I had caught the Asian flu back then. And I was out 3 solid weeks, and I thought I was going to die. I mean, that was some bad stuff. And of course, they were giving us penicillin, and they felt like horse needles because they'd shoot you in the rear end, and stab and everything. And I must have a rough rear end because every time they'd go in with their hand, they'd bend the needle. The needle would bend or it would break. Yeah, that's what so they'd come in and roll me over and you know, I said, oh God, help me get well. I don't want to take any of that.
No.
And so I did make it through, and then I went back to class. Well, one of the required subjects was shorthand. And I went to the superintendent and told her, I said, I'm not going to be a mail stenographer. You know, I don't want that shorthand. I want to, if I'm going to go, I want to be a bookkeeper or whatever. Admin, admin. Trying to talk her out of it. She said, no. And she said, if you feel that you're behind, then I'll personally teach shorthand to you. I didn't hear that. So I just made up my mind that I was going to be. And 3 other guys with me. Kenneth was one of them. We went to school together. Mm-hmm. So we all went for the Air Force. And one couldn't make it. He had a record. And Kenneth didn't have his birth certificate, so he had to go home. And I had mine, so they took me right on.
So you went up to Kansas City and then just joined?
Yeah, I went right on down.
Just enlisted in?
Texas. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then they just sent you to Texas, huh?
Yep, went to Lackland. So
you have a really long military career, and you were in for 23 years? 30? Yeah, 23. So maybe, we don't have to go through, every single detail of it, but what were some of the highlights of that, and what are some of the things that you have more intense memories of?
Well, the thing that, I guess at the start, I guess it's the way you're raised. Because then you're aggressive, you're always, for me anyway, and I've always wondered what was over the next hill. Or if I'm going to do something, I'm going to master it. And then once I master it, I forget about it. And I push it over here and I find something else to master, Well, I got into service. Like I said, I wanted to become an airborne radio operator. And of course, my hearing killed out. Yeah,
you were talking about that. You had to go to the gun range.
Yeah, and it just totally
shot your hearing.
Yeah, shot my hearing.
The shooting.
Class B hearing, that wasn't there. And so I didn't know what I was going to do then, because that was everything I wanted to do. And so they gave me some options. I could be a POL guy and drive a tug with gas and go out and gas the airplane, but I didn't want to do that.
That kind of is like going back to being an auto mechanic. All you do is drive.
Yeah, it was just kind of, and then they said, well, you can be an air policeman, and I said, oh, I don't think I'd want to be an air policeman, because I could just see myself standing out on some runway somewhere with 10 feet of snow, guarding an airplane. I said, no, I don't think I want to do that. And so they said, how about personnel? And I said, that sounds good. I'll be inside, you already know how I'm thinking anyway to go down. So, that sounds good. I'll do that. So they sent me to school, and then I went to school for, I think it was 12 weeks. And then they sent me to Forbes Air Force Base, Sac, and I'll give you a little irony out of that. That school was 25 miles from Haskell, and I wanted to go see the world. Well, here I am 25 miles from Haskell in Florida. And I said, oh, you talk about being really, I said, where's this base? And he told me, and I said, ah. And I tried to get somebody to switch with me, and nobody could do it. They didn't like Ken, So I stayed there for 5 years at Forbes. And then went on to Guam. But Forbes was really the foundation that got me going into the career I was in. And it was into computers. Because back then, in the 50s, in 57, there was no computer. They had some, but they were really far and few between. And so they come in with a key punch and a sorter, and here I am sitting there doing manual stuff, doing awards and whatever you're doing, making sure everybody's records up to date and doing all that. Really soft for them. And so I went up there one day and they had it, and I said, "What is that?" You know? And the guy handed me the manual, and I looked at it, and I said, and I pushed the button, and I could see, what it was doing. That then I could type from Chilocco, I could type 75 words a minute. So I could crack it out, so I'm sitting there. And the guy come back in and he says, "You're in the machine room." And I was the only one there. I didn't know what to, I thought, oh my God. So I had to really learn that. Mm-hmm. And they got a sorter in, and I learned how to sort, And then they gave me a test for programming, and I flunked it. I was like 10 questions short. Mm-hmm. And the guy said, "Well, that's too bad. You'll never be a programmer." And he laughed. And so I kept going into that. Then they set it up, and they were IBM. So they took us down to IBM, and we learned more. And they got more sophisticated where you could wire board and let it do whatever you want it to do. And printer and all that stuff, tied it together. So I've learned all that, and then I got to meet the guys from headquarters Sac coming in on inspections. And then I just, when I started looking at it, I said, well, somebody needs to check this against the files. Because I said, I'm sitting here looking at this stuff and it don't match. And so they put me in charge of doing that. And that was a mess. I had to get glasses then because I was working under neon lights.
Yeah.
And so, long story short, I got to work, and it was a unique bunch. So wherever you went to service, they put a prefix on it, so that you had to go wherever that equipment was. Mm-hmm. And once you got there, usually you did leave. And so, our suffix. So what happened to me is I met all these guys from headquarters that would come out here. We got to be just casual friends, but we always got along real good. Mm-hmm. And my area was pretty clean, so I got a good marks on that inspection. And so I went to Guam from there, and I run their machine when the war started.
Oh, I see.
And what happens, you have all these reports that go to the headquarters. Well, I coined when I was late on a report, I coined the word inadvertently. Because if I missed a report, if I was TDY somewhere, I didn't get back in time. I said, well, it was inadvertently filed in the action completed file, I'm sorry, and here it is.
You became good friends.
Yeah, and so the guy at Sac, he just like, I found out later on, I went up there, and he said, "You will not use the word inadvertently." Oh, they caught on to me pretty quick. But anyway, all that wound up to me getting assigned to headquarters Sac. And so I got into headquarters, and they put me into just random personnel research and reporting. And then they picked me to get into programming. And I didn't, Chilocco didn't teach me anything, and I didn't have good in math. And remember I told you I took the test and flunked it. Mm-hmm. So the guy they didn't even test me, said, well, you're going to computer school. You're going to learn programming. So they sent me to 7 weeks, 1050 back then, to learn to program assembly language.
Was that through the military, or was that at a private school,
military.
Or a public school? Military.
And that was, 8 hours a day. That's class.
Yeah.
7 weeks, except for Saturday and Sunday. So, that was pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And you had to progress each stage. You had to be successful to get to the next stage. You missed it twice, then they pulled you out of school.
Yeah.
Reclassified you something else. So I got the assembly language, and we got there, and they said, "You guys have never programmed before?" And the friend that sent me, well, he looked at me, and I said, "No, I haven't." And he said he didn't either. He said, "Well, take a certificate of attendance and go back to your base." because this is 4 programmers. I suggest you do that, but if you want to stay, it's your call. So I looked at Gary and, kind of telling us that we don't have the right gear, metal gear to get into that. I said, you want to do it? He said, hey, it's a challenge, let's do it. So we went in and do it. We graduated, I think it was 3rd and 5th in the class.
Wow.
And they were all programmers. So.
Nice.
And it was fun. And what he told us later on, he said that it really shows us that if somebody comes in that has a fresh view, that like in learning the language, he said you remembered it and you didn't have the other one to counter. Some questions, you'll say, well, wait a minute. I know if I'd done this on this program, this is what I'd do. And I don't think I want to do that here. And so you get into conflict. Yeah. We had no conflict because you're going to do it this way and this is what it does. So we're then they're going to do it.
You just follow the directions, right?
Yeah. So we got back and we got into programming.
Interesting.
We went to COBOL and then we went to unique programming and certain things that were classified.
And this was all really driven to do personnel work, right?
Right. It started with that.
Interesting.
Now, what I done at Chilocco, I took college prep courses because a couple girls I knew were in there, and I just assumed, I liked them, and so we had a good time going to classes together, and they liked me because I worked in the bakery and I could give them all cookies and stuff. And if you ever go down to school, you get back down there, you go where the bakery is. Mm-hmm. And what they done, they took and bent that window. They did it now, I didn't.
The girls?
The girls, that real thick mesh steel. Yeah. They bent it up so you could drop the cookie. Section cookie. And then when we could do it, we'd get a piece of loaf of bread when we were cooking bread. Because everybody knew what was cooking. You smelled it all over the campus. So they'd come down there and be 2 girls pulling on that thing and we'd slide that loaf of bread through. And it's hot bread. Ain't nothing better than hot bread. Better.
Did you ever use your bakery skills?
Yeah, I went to what they done, they put me to work in a bakery in Wichita.
The military?
No, in my junior year.
Oh, in Chilocco?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was in the Guard then. So what they done, they sent me to Wichita, got a job lined up and I went up. I run the retail part of it, and the guy that was the retail baker, which is, donuts and whiz bangs and whatever you want to call them, and he made wedding cakes because it was a very lucrative business for him, and he was really good. He made really good. And so that's what I run that part of the bakery, and I got paid $1.10 an hour back then. But I had to go to work at 4 in the morning. Light up the oven, start my dough, get it set, and then I could go to breakfast and then come back. And then I worked till 7 o'clock that night. That was every day except Saturday, and then I had to go in at 1 o'clock on Saturday because they closed at noon. So I done that up until August, and I had to go to guard school, or guard duty at Fort Hood. So that, I made good money. It was $1.10 an hour, and all I had to spend it on was my room and board, and that was it. Because I didn't have time to do anything else. Yeah. And I was too tired, and I ate the same thing every night. I found somebody that made good hot roast beef sandwiches with potatoes and peas.
So how old were you at this point?
Then I was 16.
Oh, so
17.
It was while you were still in Chilocco.
Yeah.
It was. Huh.
So that was my first,
interesting,
thing to come out of the school that I tested that I could do. Mm-hmm. And they wanted me to come back. They're going to buy another bakery, and I'd run that one, that retail part. And then the guy that was making cakes would go to the oven. But I just decided I didn't want to be a baker. I was too hard, bro. And I dropped down to 117 pounds. But I just, I didn't. All I done was work.
When you were there,
yeah, and I wouldn't
14 hours a day.
I wasn't eating good. Roast beef sandwiches every day, And then I got where I couldn't stand donuts because I ate the first dozen that I made, and they just melted in your mouth, you know. And then I just got real sick of them. I couldn't be around them really. And I was making, you know, the orders were like 300 or 400, you know, and it was every morning. So I gave that up.
Did I hear that the one or two of the founders of Krispy Kreme were Chilocco grads?
Yeah, he
there,
was.
is that right?
He done the icing.
Oh.
He invented the icing.
Oh, interesting.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Yeah, so
at the bakery, that's a...
Maybe if he got it, he would have weaned me off because I can't stand the Krispy Kremes. It's just too sweet. And I'm like, oh, I don't want it.
Probably would have been the same. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
So to get back, so you told me this before we started recording, but you went in you're enlisted your first four years, and then after that you briefly thought about getting out.
Yeah.
Right. So in 51, 52.
No.
51. You
It
thought.
was 61.
I mean, sorry, 61.
Yeah.
You thought I might go back into the real world, right? I might.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Since we weren't recording at that point, I'm the only one that knows that story. So maybe tell me like what that thought process and why you decided to.
Well, see, I wanted to get out to make more money, and back then I made, as a three-striper, I made $175 a month. And that's not a lot of money, and I wanted to make more money. And when I read the job description, I felt I had enough confidence that I could go into that kind of job and do it, because it's just really using common sense.
Was that the housing and urban development?
Yeah,
The
and
HUD?
I'd be moving families out of their place into new places. So I didn't think I would have that much of a problem. And of course, I come from not a rich background, but I can understand what they were going through.
Were they going to have you work with everybody, or was it a were you working with different tribal communities?
No, it was everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah, it was mostly, it was mostly Hispanics and blacks.
I see.
So there were a few Indians, but not that many at Topeka.
Oh, right. That's right.
Yeah,
You're in Kansas.
so that was in there.
So you were thinking you'd applied for that job, a HUD job, when
Yeah,
HUD was forming, and you got it. Sounds like.
Yeah, he said that I had all the qualifications, and I was his choice. And so I went back and was making plans on getting out and going down there and doing the thing, you know.
Yeah.
And then they walked in with a message and laid it on my desk, said, "You're extended for the duration." And that was that Berlin crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's a big dent, you know. And then after that, for a while, I said, well, they're going to give me a big bonus. And a big bonus then was like $2,000 or $3,000, you know. And I said, boy, what I can do with $3,000, you know. So I just finally decided to go ahead and re-enlist. And then they also threw Guam in, so.
Eventually we'll get to
Yeah, I
Guam.
said, well, that sounds good too. That's icing on the cake, so let's go.
So did you go to Berlin did you
No,
have anything
no.
to do with that at all?
No, we just on a standby.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, SAC was always on standby when something in Russia started. We were always cocked and ready to go over and kill them.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the bad thing. You just sit and wait. You know, that's all you do. And so when I got to Guam, that's when I got into the war, Vietnam.
So when you got transferred to Guam
Yeah.
is when that all started
Yeah.
to blow up.
Well,
more, obviously.
Yeah. And when I got there in '62, one of the things I wanted to do was just go to see Guam, really. I wanted to go to the Pacific because I knew my relatives had died there. You know, Tom had died in Guadalcanal. And I read every book I could get on World War II in the Pacific. And it was just unique. I mean, an adventure for me. And then to go around the island, they had old tanks that were blew up, and there were ships that were sunk, and then they had old 2-man submarine that beached there, and so that was really great to see all that. And then you find ordnance laying around, I'd be shelling, dig up a hand grenade, yeah. But we'd mark them and then call munitions, and they'd come and defuse it, sandblast it for you, and then you could put it on a little stand and put a little plate on there.
So you could keep it
From World War II, and keep it, and so tell it what it was. It was actually in battle, Guam Bay, and we found a couple of Guam Indians that knew where a tank was, and it was one of ours, a Sherman.
Yeah.
And they got surrounded, and they run out of gas. So what they do, they had to tap the gun, pull the carburetor off of it so they couldn't use it and take off. Well, they left the 30 and the 50 on. And that's what we were after. If we could find it, we could pull that 50 off, sandblast it, and then prime it and paint it and put it on a hang plaque. Real nice, and then put hang plaque. So that's what I was really looking for these days. And then other things, like they had a typhoon come in there, it's called Karen, and it had 225 knot winds. So, and gusts, I don't know what it gusted, but it was a real bad storm. And during that, when that storm was over with, the guys had found a Japanese Zero that had feathered in, got shot up, and he feathered it in to land. Didn't tear it up, just landed good. And then the jungle grew over it. And then after the typhoon, there it sat. Just like it had landed, not tore up, it was just sitting there. So they got a bulldozer and they bulldozed the road down and took a winch out and took him and put him on the bed and then took him back to the Air Force Base to maintenance. And that was their project, year project. So everybody pitched in maintenance and they redone it completely, everything.
So someone could fly it.
Yeah. Well, they were gonna give it back to Japan as a memorial. But the guys, and they were getting daily updates on what they were doing, everything. Everybody drive down there and see, and they pulled the instrument panel out, to redo it, and take the rust out. And all the instruments in it were made in USA, and it was a Japanese Zero.
Isn't that interesting?
That was something, man. That blew our mind. We said, look at them shooting us down with our own stuff. But what happened at Guam was really the start of a change of my view of the United States, really.
How's that?
Well, the Japanese were still coming out from World War II. They were still, when I got there in '62, they were still in the jungle. And they were surrendering, still surrendering. But
20 years later?
Yeah. And what happened is that after the war, they were so bad to the Guam Indians. I mean, they were just vicious with it. They'd cut the women's breasts off and just all kinds of crap, just really wicked stuff. And so the Guam Indians hated them. So after we had recaptured the island, they gave them Thompson submachine guns and they formed what they called a Guam Patrol. And they just went through the jungles and shot them on sight. There was no prisoners. They killed as many as they could. So few of them did go to the North Park, which was heavy, real heavy jungle, up by our base. And that's where these two guys were. And they were pretty smart. They had, around that north rim, they had 500 foot straight down cliff. There ain't no slanting about it. They were just straight down. And they had on one end where our swimming beach was, we called Lover's Leap. And a lot of the Japanese jumped off of that and killed themselves. Well, these other two went on down a ways and they braided vines. And they found caves in there. So they moved all their stuff into that cave. Made bamboo beds and furniture and stuff. And then they'd go to the dump at our base and get things that they needed, you know, and it was all right there.
Mm-hmm.
And they just jumped, you know, a little piece would be broke, they said, they throw it away. So these guys were taking like mosquito nets and they'd sew them, they'd patch them. And that's what they use because the mosquitoes there are just, I mean, really bad. You get in one area and they'd be all on your arm and you could go like that and there'd be nothing but blood on your arm. That's how bad it was. It was a joke because they had that big mosquito and I think it was spotted. It was black with white spots. Or it was white with black spots, one of the two. But they said one landed on the runway and they refueled it. I said, hey man, this is really bad over here. But there was always jokes.
Oh my gosh! So there are two guys that had been living in the jungle, like right next to your base that whole time.
Yeah. And they'd come up to they had been, one of them had been sighted, and they had turned over a report to the air police that they were out there. And if you go down there, I used to go down there and scrounge parts because I had a patio furniture with that, you know, that soft metal,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like aluminum type.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd go down, a piece would break, so I'd go down there and find stuff that they had thrown away and just take that one piece off and then I'd fix mine. Because once it got broke, they wouldn't replace it. And I always liked them because you get out in the back and it's nice. Mm-hmm. Sit there and have a little swing.
So you go out to the dump, you mean? And
Yeah,
find
the
your
dump.
bits of piece,
And I noticed that there was deer there. They had deer and wild boar on the island and pigs that were wild too, that were domestic and just got away and they went into the boom. And they had all kinds of fruit trees. You could live comfortably if you wanted to.
Interesting.
With food and stuff.
Yeah.
So the one guy was, from what I understood, he'd take a coffee can where they had cut off and they'd go down at the beach and they'd get water in it and then they'd put it out on a rock and the sun is really hot there. And it would evaporate because the coffee cans really, you know, heat up. And then they'd take the salt and they had a little salt bag and they put the salt in it. And that's how they got their salt.
Mm-hmm.
And they're pretty ingenious guys, you know, to do what they're doing. And they had coconut crabs that were delicious. And then all kinds of fish. Everything was there. You know. Water was abundant. All you had to do was find the falls. They had on the island, they had waterfalls there too.
Mm-hmm.
Fresh water.
So after all that time, what made them decide to turn themselves in? Or
they didn't.
Oh, they didn't. You just
No,
knew they were there.
The guy with the water can fell asleep. And then they have Guamanians that go through their coconut crab hunting because they're really good eating.
Mm-hmm.
You know? They have one gigantic claw and the other one's just small. It feeds this one.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets in there and crushes whatever and it's coconut. They get coconut and they get hold of it and they cut the hell off of it. And then they tap it where they can get into it and they'll eat the coconut. Really cool. A guy took a dog tag and he stuck it down in there, you know, with a chain on it. Yeah, and he just went, shoot, and he bent it out of it. I put my finger in there. But that's what they'd eat. A lot of times they're luxury stuff.
So did somebody who was out hunting just came across him?
Yeah, the were coconut crab hunting. And here the guy was laying there, asleep. So they grabbed him and they turned him in. And he thought, I was telling you, they gave the guys the Guam patrol, the machine guns, they just murdered everybody. Yeah, not murdered, but they killed them because of the things they did. So he figured he was going to die. And they said he just stood there and shook. He was shaking the whole time. And then they started questioning him, and he told them that he had a friend that lived with him that was still there. And they noted that, and then they got him well enough and fed up, so they took him back to Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Well, his wife had already made a tombstone for him and already had ceremonies, and then she remarried and had kids. And so he kind of melancholy about that. But anyway, they had a movie about him, I believe. And then, see, I hung around the north part of the island because I used to shell. I'd get into the water.
Mm-hmm.
And in that part of the island, they had what they called silver conches, which were at that time about $5 a piece, and that was in '62. So, you know, that's pretty good money for a conch.
Yeah.
And I found a whole bed of them. So that was, and I wouldn't take them off because I wanted to keep, you know, let them reproduce. So I'd go up there and shell, get my $25, $30 worth, and that was it.
Wow.
But they, when I went up one day and they had these little sacks of goodies, and it had little Japanese things, and they were tied all over the bushes, all over the trail. And so what they were to him, the second guy, to tell him to give himself up, to surrender, because the war was over with, and the emperor, you know, had gave it grace that they were going to not fight anymore.
Who had left him out?
Huh?
Who had left them out there?
The guy come back.
The first guy?
Yeah, he come back and he would they'd fly him around a helicopter and he'd holler his name.
Oh, seriously?
Trying to get him to surrender. And what they done, they took a bunch of, kind of like tourist magazines, I guess, and they were throwing them out in bags so he could get them and read them. You know, see that the war got over with.
Did he ever turn himself in?
Well, he had, not for a long time, because he found one book and he started looking at it. And it had the price of a beer, a Japanese beer, you know, he was looking at. Well, that's more than he made a month, you know, for one beer. And he said, I know it's propaganda, you know. So he wouldn't come out. So finally he did come out. He did surrender.
So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so there's still others in there. That was just two guys, and there was thousands of them out in that boonies.
It's crazy to think about.
And it's so thick a jungle. You know, they talk about Vietnam jungle. Well, Guam's jungle is just like that. Mm-hmm. And a guy could be between, like me and you, I couldn't even see it. That's how thick it was. But you could hear. Mm-hmm. You got real quiet, you could hear some people walking or moving around in the bush.
Right.
So, yeah, it's
Well, and you started this talking a little bit about what, at that point, you became a little bit disillusioned with the U.S.
Yeah, it was the beginning of a little research on what was going on. And I still didn't understand why we were having to go into Vietnam. But of course, you see all the movies, the Green Beret and da-da-da-da-da-da. They're the bad guys. And as we, got into the war posture. So when it started, they had, I think about 13 or 14 135 tankers, and they had put guys on there and they were flying them in. And when they bringing the troops in, because they were going to bring all the 52s in, and all we had was just the little 47s.
Right.
So they brought and had to make a whole new area for the 52s, because there were hundreds of them coming in.
Yeah.
So it means all those hundreds had to be, the troops had to support that. Aircraft had to come in, like your maintenance, your bomb loaders, all that had to come in, because there's corrosion. Everything happens, the wiring and all that stuff in that kind of area is just limited. So they brought in, I think now, I can't even, maybe I shouldn't, but they brought in thousands. And we were just a little bitty, our manning was about the same manning for an aircraft carrier. And now they, with all the aircraft we had, they had to man quite a few aircraft.
They were loading you up, yeah.
So it all was really, it was really fast and furious, and then you got a lot of thinking that what are you doing? What am I doing? What I should be doing? And I noticed we had a real big problem, because guys coming in didn't want to be there, didn't want to stay there, because their temporary quarters were terrible, and it's hot and humid, and you think it's bad here, it's really bad there. And so they were just getting on another aircraft going back. Wouldn't tell anybody. They'd get on and gone. Well, where's Joe Blow? You know. So I said, and it was our job to make sure that they didn't do that. Mm. So I devised a system that I went to Sac with and said, hey, we got to do something because these guys are leaving and we don't even know where they're at. So I went down and being the training I had already had with IBM, so I sat there and wrote up a little program and made up a format where I could tell who they are, what their number was, what they did, when they got there, and where they come from. And I just typed the card up and made that available to us so we know when a guy got on the plane, we'd say, what's your name? And we had a list that who was going to go back and who they were. And if he weren't on that list, he couldn't get on the plane. Mm-hmm. And so if they did have a flight crew that was nice to them, brothers or cousins, you know, we still had them cornered because we knew what was going on. So I made that up for us really. And then the wing commander got wind of it. Somebody showed him the list. And I wasn't directed to do that. I'd done that for our sake so we'd know who we had there, you know. Mm-hmm. So it was really because we wanted to make sure our birds were serviced and ready to bomb. And so he got a hold of me, called me to his office, and he said, I want this every day at a certain time. And, you know, I'm looking at him, and I told him, I said, well, that was just a courtesy copy for us. And he said, it's not anymore. And he's the guy that runs everything, so I said, oh. So now I had an added job to do on over and above what I was already doing in the county, in the computer. So then I started that, and then they were building new wings to support on the bases that we supported with their manpower reporting. So they told me to get on a plane and go there and see what was happening because we weren't getting our reports. So there I went. I started having to do that. And then while we're doing that, they were flying the islands, checking to see if they had a problem with the bird, that they had the old Jap runways that they could, in an emergency, they could set them down. Right. You know? Couldn't get them off. I mean, they had to bring a ship over and dismantle them and put them on a boat and take them back. Because those runways are not very built, you know, and they're old, 40 years old. So when I got into that, you know, and I started talking to some of the guys that were coming back, and it wasn't good because we were a major hub of the helicopter guys that were flying in, and they were bringing them in. Actual pilots, they were piloting them through Guam and taking them right straight into Vietnam. And so when they were started coming back, rotating back, we would be down at the terminal, just BSing. You know, we'd go down and have a cup of coffee, and here these guys come strolling in. So, hey, come on over, tell us about it. And they looked like walking zombies, you know, and they were telling us story. I said, ooh, because they said they had a big meeting and wanted to know if any of us wanted to volunteer, become pilots, helicopter pilots. Boy, I said, hey, that sounds adventurous again. And then when I started talking to them, I said, I don't think I want to do it because the only thing, not only the danger, but when you got out of it and come back, well, you got reverted back to your old grade. And I said, well, wait a minute, what happens if I'm over there, you know, for a year? Then that means if you're going to take me, make me a warrant officer, and I'm drawing warrant officer pay, and then I come back and you're going to make me a staff sergeant again, and I have to compete all over again, and I've been out of my job, you know. I said, no, I don't think I want to do that. And like I said, told us not to.
Was that the biggest concern for you, was just that inequality?
Yeah, I thought that was not very wise. I mean, if you want to get top-notch people that are dedicated, you know, you don't want to do that. Right. And we had a lot of guys after the war that got rifted and they had medals that you wouldn't believe, and they were captains, and they busted them back down to staff sergeants. And this was in, see, when I was out there, went down, this was in '69.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad, I like it. And again, as you look at this, you start changing because you see that they're not doing what they should do with the guys that are vets to put their life on the line. And they treat them just like nothing happened, you know. And so you get that feeling that you want to know more about why they do that. So, you know, it really works on you when you're doing it. And so when I left Guam, I was there for 2 bomb runs, and they weren't good. The first one, I think we lost 2 aircraft.
Over in Vietnam.
Yeah. Well, one of them was refueling, and the other one hit him. They were pulling out, dropping down, and the other one was coming up, and they tipped wings. They killed both of them. So then the end of Vietnam really started getting tough, and they were losing aircraft because they brought the SAMs in. But I left there and went to Maelstrom. I spent just a minimum amount of time there and run into all these guys I was telling you about that would expect. And here they kept saying, "You want to come to SAC headquarters? I got a job for you." And I'm sitting in Montana, 47 below. I said, "Yeah, I think it. Yeah, don't twist my arm too hard. Let's go." So I got transferred to there, and then I got after I went to those program schools.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they put me in a special program, and I run what they call the combat control. It was combat crews that run all the 52s, all headquarters SAC, all over the world. And that was my job to run that program to make sure it went to the 4-star, that his crews were identified and what they were doing and who's available and all that.
Right.
It was constant. 20-minute turnaround if I was somewhere and they called me, I had to be there. If something went wrong on that day, fix it. And that's really, it's really taxing, you know. And I'm still in that mode that what's going on? Why are we having to do all of that? You know, and we're running 2. We're still at world turn, and we're still, kind of playing ball against Russia to keep their guys, in line, and then we're running bomb missions out of Guam and Thailand. So it was. It wasn't real bad, but I still had that thought of what's happening. Why is the inequity? Why are some guys or some in this thing that are putting their life on the line with it's crew, and they get treated like they do? Yeah. And of course, during the war, when they come back, people will just, and the guy's over there dying. And then I got transferred there to headquarters USAC because the guys had that program before me. They gave it to me. Now he went on to headquarters USAC. So he come back and said, "Hey, Keith's working on this. Let's bring him up here."
Yeah.
So I went to headquarters USAC.
Where was that?
It was at Randolph Air Force Base.
Mm-hmm.
And it's manpower. And they were designing a brand new personnel system
Oh.
for millions of people, officers and enlisted and civilians. And so they sent me back to school. Now here I go learning how to do, and this is Chilocco education. I was learning how to do it, and I didn't know nothing. You could tell me to call a name, logarithm, an algorithm, and I said, "Well, what is that?" Well, I had to go to school to learn communication, so I got into that, and I thought it was fun. And I remember now, I took the test and flunked it. Some say you got to throw that test away.
Yeah, their mistake.
Yeah. So we got into the actual. They come in and give me books, and they say, "I want you to read these and now pick a system because we're designing a system. I want you to give me a recommendation on what system we need to use that could be a future thing, And so I just was horsing around one day with one of the colonels, and I said, well, DTAP, man, that's probably the thing you need to get into. And it was really simple, but I didn't know how big it would handle anything. Really, I didn't test it. We went right to the general. My boy said DTAP. I said, what did I do? I'm going to go to jail. I know I'm going to have a band out and rip everything off I got. And once we got it in, it was really good because it was user-friendly.
Well, that's fortunate.
And you could read it just like English. And you could actually say yes and no. And it generated code. Mm-hmm. And so all you had to do is put down what you were doing, why you were asking those questions. You know, what is this process? So it's really a good code. It was something that broke the thing where a non-programmer could look at a program and say, all right, and you always put your remarks in it so he knows where that flow is coming from and where it's going. Mm-hmm. So that worked out. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got shipped from near. Usually when you get headquarters USAP, they give you a prefix because you're designing systems. You're going down to the nitty gritty, walking in, sit down with a guy and say, "What do you need? What's your job?" And so you just take off your uniform, your stripes, and put on your fatigues and walk over and sit down with him and watch him to see what he does, how he does it. And then you sit right there on the spot and design a system for him. And instead of having somebody up there that's a general saying, you're going to do this. Well, it may not cover what he needs to do.
Right, so, sitting down.
And that's what was happening. We had a guy that stopped. He said, well, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, the guy ain't got any money. You're going to have to feed his family and get him a place to live. The only way you can do that is to get in the finance system and get him a check. It's simple as that. Boy, so we're sitting there just crying away.
Figuring it out.
And we had all been through that. So right away we knew that's what we got to do. Well, doing that, if you got any questions,
no, go ahead.
And I always thought back when I got into all that, and I got into, let's say I was at systems design, data analysis. I went to the Naval Computer Institute. I said, well, what am I doing here? I'm in there with White House people, and they're setting teams up, and my team's all at White House. Of course, they didn't do anything. So we're sitting there and they, Keith, what are we going to do? I said, well, you guys are going to tell me, But anyway, I found that they're just everyday civilians and they're not really programmed. Yeah. And they were going through just to get a taste.
Yeah.
And so here I'm at that level and having to do all the work. I didn't like that.
I can understand that.
But during that period, you get a prefix. I talked about a prefix and a suffix to whatever you do. And once you get that prefix, then you're there. For the duration. And so we got a new general in, and he said, I want all my troops to have a short tour out of the way so I don't have to worry about losing them. I want you to get them over there and get them back. And now we'll set out in this new realm we're going into, and there's not going to be any movement. You guys are going to be right here working. So what they done to me, they called me up and said, all right, you got to go overseas, short tour. So you're going to go into communications. And it's supposed to go to Saigon, but they had just started moving it out because everything was getting too hot. And they moved us into OOHRP in Thailand.
So you were transferred to Thailand?
Yeah, transferred. We were 20 miles from Vietnam, Laos. 20 miles, 20 clicks, we were right there. And I had no, background in communications, really how they even work, what they were, the equipment, everything. So here I was traipsing. And when I got there was just two of us and an officer. And the guy that, when I got there, he'd run took care of everybody. We had all the communication in Southeast Asia then. That was in '74, because the war was closing down. And what happened is that the Hmongs and CIA were still fighting the war in Laos and Cambodia and Vietnam, because Vietnam hadn't went down yet. And so when we got there, or when I got there, the guy took the cushy job and he got the air traffic control people that handle towers, guys. And I got the ground troops, or what they call outside plant. And those guys were radio operators. They strung wire and take care of the switches and really the radio maintenance is the big thing. So we had communication still going in the jungle because of what was happening to Laos and Cambodia. Yeah. And Laos was really heavy because they had the Chinese were in there and the North Vietnamese and the Russians. So our guys were fighting all that. And nobody, you couldn't say anything because it was classified. Right. Now it's been declassified, so I can tell you.
Yeah.
I think, don't put me in jail for that.
I think you're safe on that one.
Yeah, I found the secret. That's what I say. I'd give you that secret stuff that I got because it's fantastic to read it.
Yeah, you have to send that to me. Absolutely.
And I was always asking questions. Why? Why are you having to do that? And of course, it's a secret then, so you couldn't really come out and say, all right, you got a clearance. If I tell you have to die, think kind of that funny thing that you see on there. But as I went through that, in that time period, is that it was just all really hectic because things were happening so fast.
So when was this you were sent to Thailand then? What year? What years?
Well, I was there in '74 and '75.
Okay. And
so what happened is that, we had that Paris Peace Accord and they pulled our guys out. Well, we were still fighting in Laos and Cambodia and Vietnam because of the South. We were still supporting the South Vietnamese. And here I got over, thought I was going to have a cushy job, I said, oh my God. And then there's so much understructure stuff because those guys that are working on communications, they're stringing wire, they have temporary RAPCONs out so they can move people around, helicopters, slower fighters and stuff. So that was my job to make sure that all that happened. Plus you have the major switch, telephone switch, that runs everything, all the telephone communications between them and the United States, because we went through the satellite. Before, it was a cable that run into South Vietnam. And so when they went over the DMZ, they got a little bit over that, well, they captured our cable. And so they let us communicate for a little while, then they shut us off. And that's why we're trying to get hooked into that satellite to make sure everything's going to go good.
Yeah. And
so what happened is that things were always going on, and he was like a LeMay. He had a big wall, and it had all of Southeast Asia. And you'd come in, and as a maintenance guy, I could look to see where my operators were. And if they were operating, they had a light on. And if they weren't, then they turned red. So you got a problem. Mm-hmm. And so that plus they have a high clearance. And if they start living with a Thai girl, then you have to pull their clearance.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of things you had to do as an individual to try to keep everything going. And so what happened, I think one of the campaigns we had, the first one was we had to evacuate Phnom Penh because the Khmer Rouge had surrounded the city. Mm-hmm. And they were killing everybody. I mean, they were taking them prisoners. And so to get in and out of there, we had to have our aircraft flying in to evacuate civilians, American civilians. And so we had to put our our mobile units in, and they were blowing them up as soon as they got off there. And they weren't slouches. They were very good marksmen.
Mm-hmm.
They're very good at what they did. They'd kill you. So those guys, we fly a plane in and drop our equipment off so we could start communicating, with a evacuation. And that poor guy was sitting there, and he's gone, And what they do, I don't know if you ever heard, they grid. They'll grid an area.
Mm-mm.
And then wherever you're at on that grid, see, they'll fire around and they'll see where it hits on the grid. Then they just go over and they have the coordinates and then they blow you up. So the old man said, "The hell with that." He said, "I want you to hook it up to a truck, and when we come in and land, you take off. Don't sit still so we can get around, and get flights in place till dark. And then you can start communicating and get you guys in and out."
Oh gosh.
So that was going on. That was one of the things that we did as a campaign ribbon, I guess you could call it. And then Vietnam went down. So we were there. Our communications was, supporting that. And that was big. And that's really turned my whole attitude right there. I was never so sad in my life to see that go down.
What was well, I hear the emotion about it, but what was sort of your epiphany with that? What did you sort of shift from and to?
Do what?
Like, where did you, when that was a turning point for you, I think is what you said. What happened to me is looking at it,
and they had nothing. We cut off their supplies, we cut off their money. They had no ammunition, they had no fuel.
You mean the South Vietnamese?
Yeah, we just cut it.
Yeah.
The government cut it. And so when they knew that the end was near, and we knew it, we were reconning it, and we were doing as much as we could to help them. But they had just that Laotian army bunch, the loyalists, was something to behold. I really, and now you hear a lot of people talking about the Hmongs. Well, the Hmongs were the guys that lost their lives, and they had never been out of those mountains, and they decided to support us, and they let them die. That's it.
This makes me think of another side of this too, and I don't know, you haven't really talked much about it at all, so maybe it wasn't significant, but I wonder, going into not only the military, but all these other places, as a Native American person, did that have any effect or impact on your outlook or your experience?
It was constant.
So maybe talk a little bit about that.
It was constant, because when I first got to Forbes, and as honorary as I am, I ain't gonna let anything slide. You gonna call me chief? We'll give you a name. We'll call you. And it was there when I got there. They had names, Indian things, reference to an Indian thing. And they said, "Hey, we got a covered wagon, or we got a redskin," and that was the name of something happened. Something dynamic, with our atomic stuff, our bombs.
So they would name equipment or whatever.
Yeah, they named something that was happening that was in a what did you call it? A detrimental way.
Like derogatory.
And their old. Well, it's like when they got what's his name? They had called it Operation Geronimo. Yeah. I said, "Oh, what the heck is the?" I really had that, but then they called it Redskin, and I said, "Where? I'm looking for a buddy." Might be somebody I know. And I'd always do that. And they said, "Don't put him on that list." Yeah, we'll have everything in there. But we raised hell about that, and it finally went back to SAC headquarters, and they stopped calling it that. You know what they called it? Covered wagon. So they got, You know?
So who's we? Were there other people?
Yeah, other Indians.
Other Native Americans, yeah.
Every time you meet somebody, well, especially when I went to Headquarters Youth Center, I could get in there and look at the serial numbers, and most of your serial numbers, like your 442s, are all in this area. So I'd look and catch names, and then a lot of us had guard numbers until they changed it. In the guard numbers, I always know 2738365. I knew that 2738 was all of our guys in Oklahoma.
Oh, just the Oklahoma.
Yeah, so I could go in there and pick them up, and then I could follow all my classmates here, see where they're going.
You would watch your Chilocco classmates were at.
Yeah, and anytime I could get a hand to them, I'd go down and talk to my buddies. Because I played softball too, and with a lot of the manners, the guys that man. And we'd talk, and then I'd slide that in with a beer. I said, hey, I got a partner that's trying to get into here. It looks like he's volunteered, and I think I know where he wants to go. Can you help him out? And he was, sure.
How interesting.
So they go in and do that. And then you could also, where we were at, we were also looking into the future on what kind of guy we wanted to get into our area. So we'd bring in a recruit, look at his aptitudes, you know, and say, oh, all right, we're putting him in programming school. Now we're going to follow him all the way through. And if he's a crackerjack, we want him over in our box.
Yeah, you could watch that for sure.
So then we get them over. But what happened is though we got the crew, and they were really good, and they were fast, and they picked up, and they were really going, you know. And so what happened is they become so good they'd only go 4 years. Then they'd get out into the civilian market and just clean up, you know. It was just like Bill Gates' bunch, and that's where they'd go, you know. And then we had USAA is part of the generals there in the top brass are all from the headquarters that I was at. And they'd go over there and go to work, and they were up at the high level.
Interesting. So going back to your Native American identity or Indian identity, when you were places like Guam or Thailand, was that still something that was constant for you, or was that,
did
that make an impact? Always?
It's always there. And in Guam, it wasn't too bad because you really didn't have that. They didn't like Guamanians, a lot of them did. So that, if you look like a Guamanian, then you fell into that.
You mean the American military didn't like Guam Indians?
Right.
Or Guamanians, yeah.
The Guamanians didn't like that because how they treated the young ones. And that's anywhere, you know. So, and then some of them were just prejudiced.
So did they think that you looked like a Guamanian?
Oh yeah, I had a blast with them. Yeah, I had a real nice tan, not as light as I was now. And I had a pretty good tan. I was always in the water, you know, shelling and stuff when I wasn't working. Or I was out scrounging around in the boonies looking for stuff. And I had a couple of guys that I run around with were Guamanian, and one of them became governor of Guam. In fact, we stood up for him for his wedding when he was a three-striper. How about that? And he was Carl Gutierrez, and he was governor 3 times.
Of Guam?
Yeah.
That's cool.
And then I met my wife works for probation, federal probation, and one of the probation officers transferred over to San Antonio. We got to Albuquerque, and we got to know him. And I told him, I said, "What about Carl?" He said, "He's going to jail." I said, "Whoa, what?" And then he told me, and I said, "Oh my goodness."
And that was someone you knew from
Yeah. I said,
there.
"Wow, that's really something." But Carl was he was a go-getter. You know, we all scratched each other back because they worked in DAT services and I worked in personnel. So we had to use their equipment to run reports. And, you know, when you sort, 6,000 or 7,000 cards and you have like 8 decks of those 6,000 and 7,000, then you got to take them all and merge them together. And then run a report because they all have data in them that you extract.
Yeah.
And you make a report. So I'd be down there working with him,
Right.
and he'd be OJTing me how to use stuff that I never used before. You know, we sit there, key it up, and then I'd dream up a shortcut, and we'd do that.
Yeah.
So we become pretty good.
We'd work with that.
Yeah.
Did you ever run into other Chilocco classmates while you were out?
Oh
there?
yeah,
Did
yeah,
you?
Guam.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, in Guam. I was sitting there, and then remember I was telling you they were bringing in thousands of troops. And what they do in SAC is that when you get in SAC, they have a contingency group. And what happens, they're all members of certain jobs that have to be with that aircraft to make sure that it's functional and can do its mission. So those guys go with it. They have that little group.
Right.
And when the klaxon goes off, that little group's got to run out there and grab their duffel bag and run and jump on the plane. And with SAC, you might just go down to the end of the runway and the klaxon goes off. And you have to turn around and come back. Well, here all these guys had that duffel bag, and that's all your stuff. That's all your uniforms, you know, your work uniforms, boots, socks, everything. And so what them guys do, they just stuff paper towels or regular towels and anything, you know. And so they run out there and grab their bag and run jump on the plane. Well, that's what happened to this guy. And what he done is he got, the klaxon went off and we were going to war. I mean, there was no ifs, ands, and buts. And I come walking into work, come walking down the hall, and I heard that key. And I turned around there, he said a three-striper, it was Dion Francis. And I said, Dion, what are you doing here, buddy? And he said, hey, man, he says, they divert us out of combat, you know. And he said, I got problems. I really need some help. And I said, shoot, what do you got? He said, I don't have any uniform. I said, what? You're not a baggie, are you? And he said, yeah. He said, it was full of just trash. He said, and here I'm for the duration of that TDY. And so I said, all right. And so the clerk, I said, I'm taking him with me now. And we'll start his process tomorrow. So we went down to clothing sales and got him, uniforms, went over to BX and got him all his essential toiletries and got him all fixed up.
So did he stuff his own bag with that stuff, or did someone
No,
do it to
he
him as a
did.
prank?
No, he did.
He did.
See, they all those guys, you don't want to take good uniforms, stick them in a duffel bag, and never use them.
Oh, he was just thinking it's
and
not.
Every time we
we're
never
never
really
gonna-
go to war, and they were always running around. And here these idiots come in, and we didn't have anything left after that 7 group, after his group got there. After that,
Just wiped
they
out.
were out of luck.
Oh gosh.
Had to go to work blue jeans and t-shirts.
No.
So that's and Dion, I sat there and cried. But he became a preacher.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we were pretty good friends. We were sitting there and I would laugh about that. And I said, oh my God.
Well, and that actually leads to, I think, this point we've been talking about 2 hours. I don't want to keep you forever, but I want to kind of be able to get to. I know you retired out in 1980, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you went to Thailand, and then you had a little bit more time doing other things administratively, right?
Well, the Thailand part of it was the combat part of it, really.
Right.
And when somebody says, well, you were at Thailand, I said, well, it wasn't any different from where you were at, because we died too, and our missions were into Laos and Cambodia and North Vietnam and South Vietnam. Because what they do is call for fire missions, and our jets would go in. And we had all kinds, we had old World War II guys flying. It was really something to see. I mean, it just totally blew me away, man.
Just their pilot skills.
Yeah, here come a 1939 transport. I said, my God, what they... And that big bad baby come in and was full of money, and pigs and kids and everything. Because they always had white aircraft, when they landed.
Yeah.
And I got to know some of those guys, and they'd have a weekly feast, so they invited me down. And they were really secure, secure area. And anytime that you're on, you didn't have to be part of them either, but anybody that got a threat that they were going to kill you, you had to treat it that they were going to kill you. So when my comm guys would get that, then I had to make sure that they either got up country or out of country. So what we do, we bring them up to our area from Bangkok or down south and put him in a job that's really secure. And if anything happened to him, then we put him on the transport and get him out right away.
Right.
No ifs, ands, or buts. We had some guys that didn't make it because they didn't do what we asked them to do, those commanders down south. And we wanted them to quarantine so we could find out what was happening. And this one commander let him go. And he got on the bus and they've been driving, they've been on that bus every day looking for him. And it was, finally he got on to go get his stuff to get out, and they knew he was going to get it. And as soon as he got on the bus, they shot him about 8 times.
Who is they?
The local people,
Oh.
local gangs, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have stories that they tell you that nobody would hear. You wouldn't hear these stories because they killed a lot of the GIs were married the Thai girls, and they had a fantastic amount of money if they got killed. Insurance, government insurance, and the girls would have to kill them just for the money. That's the only reason they married them. Or they could get back to the States, get out and get their citizenship. And we knew about one guy that he was a major, and he started dating a Thai girl, a very well-educated young lady, and their customs are like Spanish. I mean, when you go on the first date, well, you got grandma and aunt and uncle and everybody else is going with you, so you better know that you got a group, and they're very strict. And they're very, I don't know what we would say, they wouldn't take any chances. And they're very earnest and honest people. And so what he done, he told her he wouldn't marry her. And they started dating and everything. So they got serious. And then he said, well, I'm going to marry you. And so she, of course, right away she told her family. And the family was well with it. And what happened is he was getting ready to rotate, so he told her he was married. And normally when that happens over there on something like that, the girl will kill him and then she'll kill herself because they lose face.
Yeah. So he told her he was already married?
Yeah. So she, of course, she's very, like I say, she's very well educated. And she sat down and from what we understood, I guess, thought it out. And she told that she hired 2 goons, or maybe more than that. But she said she wanted them to do something to him that he would never forget her. And so they chopped his arms off right here. Both of his arms while he was waiting on the bus. And so when we passed that on to our troops, said, hey guys, now you got to know this is going to happen to you if you lie to them and you married and you move in with them. They call it T-locking. So, and I didn't have anything like that happen, but I had a guy get killed for his insurance. He worked in finance and she had him shot. He rode a bike home every night, so these guys followed him. Shot him in the back, and then he fell off, and they rolled him over and put 2 slugs in his heart. So that, and then they fragged, if they'll find out where you live in the hooch, and they'll put a hand grenade underneath your floor, or they'll shoot you when you go to the mailroom. They'll find out where they watch it. So that was, they said, wow, you guys had a good time. And I know, well, it was just as bad. You didn't really go in the jungle and fight, but there was a constant look that you had to be on your keen side all the time. Yeah. I mean, there was no, you go downtown, they had what they call bot buses. The bot is a nickel. And you can buy, it's just like a Toyota truck, and they put a little top on it with keep the water off of it. And they run between the base and downtown, and it costs you a nickel. So you can't beat that. But when you get inside of it, if there's 5 guys and you, then you better get off, because they'll rob you or do something. And they had this one guy that he was a kung fuer, you know, and he was a black guy, and he pretty rough on mouth wise. And he got on, and they had enough of it, so they got him. And they cut every muscle that he had. They didn't kill him. They sliced him here, down there. So he was really a cripple. And he done himself. So all that was constant. That kind of stuff. They were putting glass in beer and, you know, crushed glass. And it was just, you had to be real constant and vigilant. And then the water you couldn't drink because they didn't have a sanitized system. You couldn't swim in the swimming pools because they never used chlorine stuff. You instantly die. You know, that's what we said. Dive into that beautiful pool. And they said, you come out just a skeleton. You know? And then they had so many diseases.
So how long were you in Thailand?
I was there for about a year.
Did you know most of that going in? Did
No.
you have any inkling it would be
no.
like that?
No, because when I got there, I said, hell, I'm not going off base. You know, I said all this stuff. And then the guy tells you, the medic, he got up. And of course, they put a little humor and then they get a wise guy in there. He said, well, gentlemen, I'm going to tell you this. He said, if you get wounded, you get shot, don't fall on the trail, fall in the weeds. Looking, why? He said, well, that dirt's been there since Genghis Khan, and it's got so much stuff in it. He said, you'll probably die before we can get you to the hospital. I said, you gotta be serious. And then some of the guys that worked with us did get, what do you call them? Parasites. And it paralyzed them. And they just start a little bit at a time. They could move their arms. Then they got down where they couldn't move their legs, and they just paralyzed. And what they do is they ship them out of there down to the Philippines where they have a big hospital. And then I guess they go through and poison the parasite. You have to go through that system to get it out. And he come back, he was okay, they cleaned him out. But I said, oh my God. And so when you go drinking there, you carry 2 bottles. They have a little army kit that you carry your bottle with, and you get cigarettes and lighter, you know, and all the paraphernalia you need to go out.
Right.
And you always carry 2 bottles. One, you carry a bottle that you don't like, because you use it to wash the glasses out. Then your good bottles over here, Jim Beam or, you know, Johnny Walker Black or Red or whatever, you know. So then you drink that. And you can't eat any food. The food will get you dysentery. And the girls would always steal, now this is really getting to the nitty gritty, they always steal the toilet paper. So we always had a stack of Stars and Stripes. And said, all right, pass the Stars and Stripes. So you'd slide it down.
So if girls came to the base or if anywhere, they would just take it to
Well, they worked. See, they worked there.
Ah.
A lot of them. And each one of the guys, the senior NCOs, like where we had our own hooch. But what happens is that they take care of it. They wash your clothes. I never had dirty clothes the whole time I was there. They ironed my socks and my underwear. Everything was ironed. The uniforms were heavily starched. And the only problem is they beat you when they wash them. You know, see the old days, and they twist the water out of them and they slam them, you know, on the cement. And then by the time you get ready to get back, you put on your night-to-start shirt, the sleeve will come off because all the threads are rotten. And that was constant. You could see one guy go in and he'd have a whole big wall locker full of uniforms. And the guys would sell them because they were going to bring them back and wear them. So he'd just buy them, so he didn't have to worry about it. So he had all, you know, about 60 uniform sets. I said, God. Hey, I only pay $4 for most of them, you know. So that's what I had to do, because mine getting so
Get worn
frail.
out from being
Yeah,
washed,
it was, I was ashamed to wear it. It looked like, you know, it was getting frayed everywhere. So I had to do that too.
Yeah.
But the one thing that always ticked us off was that somebody said, "Oh, you were in Thailand." And I said, "Yeah, we operated at Thailand." I said, you ever know what they do there?" And nobody said, "Yeah, you were down at the beach and drinking beer and all this good stuff." I said, "No, we were flying planes to help you stay alive, you know, because they call fire missions to go in, the guys that get pinned down." And they flew all kinds of crap.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. And those guys put their life on the line. And one guy, you ever heard of a bird dog?
Mm-mm.
That's just a little Cessna. And all he carries is phosphorus missiles. And when he finds like an inter-aircraft gun, he'll fire that phosphorus and you can't put it out.
Mm-hmm.
And it burns, you know, if he's burning. Well, he'll fire it in there. Then he'll turn and get out, and then the other guys will come in behind him and bomb, put it out of commission. But that guy flying in there, that's all he got.
Mm-hmm.
Might carry a pistol, you know, or improvise and do something else, you know. But those guys, oh, it's in a lot of respect for them.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of things happening. And when Vietnam, I was just going to tell you that really changed me on how the United States was structured and what we did was just really bad. Because those poor people put everything they had into that war and they died because of what we did to them. You know?
Yeah.
Not that we bomb them, but taking the money away, promise them. And when you tell, it's kind of like an Indian, you tell something that, you know, I'm going to do this for you, and this is what's going to happen. Well, you believe them. You know, and then they don't do it. So then you know that, you know, they got like tongue like a snake. You know, talk out of both sides of their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. And they were flying out of there, out of Saigon and all those bases that had aircraft. They had their families in there. And they took pigs, chickens, everything they could get, they put on that aircraft. And get air to the relatives. And they couldn't get enough air height to get up off the water. A lot of them come in and had jungle stuff in their cows, you know, where they went through the tree.
Yeah.
And they splashed all the way over to Udapan in Thailand. And they were getting sea salt, you know, because they couldn't get any ice, they were so overloaded. And they'd call in and say, "We're coming in." You know, there's nothing you could do but try to clear the runway to get them in.
Yeah.
And it was just sad. And then when Vietnam went down, they had the Mayas. They captured a boat, Cambodia did. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's communications, and they had the base that we worked with fighters. And so they had an operation to go down to try to get the Mayas back and the crew. Mm-hmm. So they called an operation, and that's, you need to get that and read that, because that was the first time we left the Marines behind. And they got killed and tortured. And that wasn't good. We lost, the Air Force lost 24 guys right off the bat. I mean, they weren't even in the battle. And they were coming to join it. But they were in a big Jolly Green, they flipped upside down.
Oh.
And that 24 guys and
Yeah.
crew and the guys that were going. So it's, you know, there's a lot of stuff that people don't understand. And it's, you know, in my group, when I went out, we wore civilian clothes and our aircraft was black.
Yeah.
We didn't have a mark on it. And then I got to thinking, you know, I'm saying, well, my God, they find us and we're going to go, we'll be just like a spy, you know, because we got nothing.
Yeah.
There's no uniform. I got to think, I don't really like this. And we were flying around to our places, you know, make sure everything was good. So it was a little leery. But the thought about them and hearing people talk about the Hmongs now, like they do, some ghetto bunch. And I said, boy, they really don't know the history of those guys, because they're there because we put them there. And some of the Hmongs got out good because they had an island they put some of them there in the Philippines. And they were still in the jungle and they were still in the mountains. Yeah. And these guys had to go to Minneapolis.
I was going to say, Minnesota.
Yeah, and then the kids don't know. Here they're growing up, that's 50 years ago, 60 years ago. So I'm saying, Jesus, this is really tough. And we all sat there. There was 4 of us sitting there drinking a beer, smoking a cigarette. And we just damn near cried there.
At the base there? Just watching that?
Yeah. Sad. And the little guys come in. I have to put humor and cry at the same time. They fly these old World War II trainers that we gave them.
Yeah.
And they just, that's all they had. I mean, that was their Air Force, boy. And they'd come in there and they'd just spittering and sputting and sound like an old lawnmower getting ready to blow up, And they come in and land. Then they taxi over to the classified area. And those guys at the CIA, and they'd go ahead and patch them up, and get the engine fixed and everything. And one of them, they had to get back because there was a really heavy battle going on. And they took duct tape and they filled the bullet holes in the skin. So he'd come out and I said, my God, look at that. I said, oh shit, I would put my money on him. And a lot of them would fly out and they were still rough sounding when they left. So when you get up tuned ear and hearing a new one and hearing him, he's not long to be. And then they bring him down, train him how to fly, and they fly over our base day and night. And all they do is have them fly in a circle.
Just training.
So they're training, quick training. And I said, well, I ain't gonna do no good. He's gonna get in the plane down there and take off, and he's gonna fly off. He said, they really have to be good to shoot him, man. He's going to But the thing, it's just really sad to see that they treat them.
Yeah. I think it's a really valuable perspective, though, because you're right. You often hear more about what was going on, especially in Vietnam and even some of the other Asian countries in that area, or where our stations were, like Guam or some of the more specific islands. You don't hear as much, you're right, about what was going on in Thailand or even Laos to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But it's interesting.
Well, our guys too, see, they passed a law there in Thailand that you couldn't carry a gun if you were a non-citizen in Thailand.
Oh, yeah.
So when you went out to have a meal or anything, really, go have a beer, go to the movies, everybody's sitting around, you got a gun. Pistol. And they're hot-headed. The Thais they're not even keeled, I'd say. So if you need to have a gun if you're going to pick a fight, because you're going to lose. And then they always take up for each other. And the more you learn the language, the more you don't want to go any more into the language, because then you learn that they're talking about your mother and sister in bad ways, So, and they're looking right at you, telling you that. And if you know Thai, then you just call off and bang them right there, and then you're going to get shot. That's all there is to it. So you got to be really vigilant in what you do.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, and when I come back, I was always that way. When I got back,
You're still watching.
Yeah, I watched everything. And I tell my wife that. I said, well, you got to be more observant. I said, do you see that guy over? She said, no. I said, well, he's right there. And I mean, man, he could have grabbed your person. Nothing flat. Said,
all of a sudden, you're watching for everything.
Yeah, I'm sitting there going, yeah, and I had that.
Yeah.
But then you had the feeling that you could get through that. You could get through anything. So, and then a lightning bolt hits over here, and then that goes away real quick.
That's probably true. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that was the up and downs of it, but I wouldn't trade it for anything because it was a lot of experiences that I never had again. That it was interesting, and I made a lot of good friends.
Yeah.
And they're all dead. Most of them are dead now. So
You're from the military?
yeah, military and school.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, we're all everybody I run around at Chilocco are all dead. They just died last year. The last two died. That's sad.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
So, you know. But that was my history, and
You know what? Here's the thing. We've talked for over 2 hours, but I have no doubts we could sit here for another hour.
oh yeah.
We're not even to the point where we actually retired.
I could tell you stuff about Chilocco and just crack you up.
I'm sure we may have to revisit. We definitely will.
If you could find, and I tax you, I think it was Bell Telephone. It may not have been Bell, but one of the telephone companies come out here and done a documentary on Chilocco back in '53, I think.
Really?
And Sauce, again, here's old Sauce. We were detailed to clean out bullpens, and you get the manure out. And it was pretty fresh manure, so you really had to get it out of there. They wouldn't you clean it up good.
Right.
And so we had a manure spreader and a little farm-all tractor, and we filled that up, and then you go out where they tell you to spread it, you know. So we're going out there, and I was driving. Sauce was hanging onto the back of the seat.
Yeah.
And my other friend, Don Anderson, worked in the bakery building. And he's back there working the lever to spread the manure.
Yeah.
And Sauce says, he said, I wonder how fast this goes. And he grabbed the gas gauge thing, the throttle, and he shoved it all the way forward, and boy, there we went, man.
Oh my gosh.
And they were taking a picture from that documentary. There was a pan, you know, of the dairy barn, the stock barn, and here we come flying by, and we were, you know, getting airborne, and we had a rooster tail of cow manure in here. We had it all over our back. And Don was sitting back there hanging on for dear life, and he was just covered. And then we were all watching the movie later on. The next year they come down the show, and I said, Sauce, look, that's us.
Oh, I'm gonna have to see if I can find that. That's
and
awesome.
if you can find it, it's a good documentary because it tells all about the school.
Oh, that's funny.
Just to see that guys go by, I said, hey, where's the movie, man?
That's so funny. All right, I think I'm going to shut it down at this point.